Okay, I'd just like our producer to put up our comment 3 that's been posted on our Facebook page. We'll take a look at that comment related to the question I'm just going to ask, and I'll be back with the next question directed at Mr. Bakri. Let's take a listen now.
One should not be amazed, perplexed or bewildered by the joint venture of Al-Qaeda, Israel, Turkey, USA, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Qatar and Salafi Takfiri Wahhabi terrorists against the Syrian people. Because as the famous hadith says, Al-Kuffarun Millatun Wahida, i.e. Kufr is a single nation.
Okay, that comment by one of our Facebook viewers. I'll put this question to Mr. Bakri. Now, Mr. Bakri, militants we know have attacked the mausoleum of Hujr ibn Adi, a prominent companion or Sahaba of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. They destroyed his shrine, exhumed his grave, took his remains to an unknown location. And prominent Sunni scholars have counted Hujr ibn Adi, as you might know, amongst Prophet Muhammad's pious Sahaba. Prophet Muhammad's wife, even Aisha bint Abi Bakr, has been documented as saying that Muawiyah, you killed Hujr and his associates. By Allah, the Prophet told me in the ditch of Adra, I'm quoting here, 7 men will be killed. Due to this, all the skies and Allah will be upset. So this is being as proof that he is considered a sacred figure, a respected figure among the Sunni and Shia alike. So what is the reason for violating religious sanctities?
First of all, your guest in London, he accused me to be a pitch agent. I think really it is just another pathetic and shallow comment. And he said on the record that I admit it. That's completely like typical Shiism. Shiism really, when they fabricate story against Sunnis and typical people like this, I'm sorry to tell you, that is not the first time we hear comment like this. Even the very people here, they call me a Syrian agent, Bashar al-Assad agent. If you see that yesterday on the main front page of Al-Jamhuriya, people who are pro-Hariri, they call me Syrian agent. Hezbollah, they call me Israeli agent. Other people call me American agent. Feel free, to call those who are agents of Almighty Allah and His messengers who are Muslims. However, regarding the companions, I believe it's not the first time. The Ba'ath parties of Iraq did that before, and the same thing now they're doing the Ba'ath parties of Syria. They are the people who are responsible for killing of Bouti, for even attacking the graves of the Sahabis, may the peace of Allah be upon him. They are the people who committing crimes and try to attribute it to Al-Qaeda. There's no Qaeda in Syria until now. They try to attribute it to the Salafis and
So who are they, are you saying?
This fabrication is just meant to
Mr. Bakri, who are they which you're referring to there? When you say they are trying to frame other groups, who are they in your opinion?
Sorry?
Who are those responsible for this violation of religious sanctities? Who are those responsible in your view?
I believe the responsible for that is the Shabiha, is the main people, Bashar al-Assad. They are the people who do that, and I'm not surprised it is not Hezbollah, involving himself in something like this, really, because after all, Hezbollah involving themselves inside Syria now. You don't want to believe that. It's up to you to take and to believe what you want, what you don't want. But the situation in Syria, I think Iran and Hezbollah, they involve themselves deeply, and that's why Nasrallah said publicly he's not going to permit the takfiris, and he covered up that the pro-American, pro-Israel. And we know very well Hezbollah is really at very good relationship nowadays, with Israel. There's no single bullet, has been really fired at Israel from the 2006. So why we are talking about try to trading with the issue of Israel. I think Hezbollah make great mistakes on involved themselves.
Okay, you referred to Hezbollah, Mr. Bakri. Sorry for jumping in. Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah had warned that attacks on holy shrines would carry with it grave consequences. Mr. Chandan, he was saying, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the countries supporting these groups will be held responsible. Do you think that this is something that will lead to regional players getting involved, the conflict getting even more, getting rather into a sectarian aspect? And also your response to what was said there by our guest, Mr. Bakri.
Well, sister, I think like to kind of suggest to our colleagues at Press TV to perhaps think twice before inviting such an ultra lunatic onto your show on Press TV, because the type of madness this sorry excuse for a man is coming out with. And and sometimes Mother Nature makes cruel mistakes, and obviously she has made one of them in the manifestation of Mr. Omar Bakri. So really, I don't really think it's actually even worth responding to him on that level, because it's just disgusting nonsense, frankly. But he did say before that it was a crime for Hezbollah getting involved in Syria in the defense of the border villages, which have Lebanese Shia villagers there who are under threat and attack by the lunatic death squads that Mr. Omar Bakri is supporting. But at the same time, Mr. Omar Bakri and his colleagues in the FSA and Jabhat Nusra and all these other nutters in Syria, frankly, are feeding into Syria all kinds of absolute criminal death squad elements throughout the Middle East, North African region, including in England. Now in England, you can go and fight against the Syrian Arab Republic and the army, and you'll be celebrated as a freedom fighter. So this once again exposes totally the marriage of convenience between Mr. Omar Bakri and his colleagues and NATO on the other hand. Even Muaz Khatib, a leader of the FSA who's trying to resign and he's unable to, even he is saying and warning to Hezbollah that imperialism and its allies in the region are stoking and facilitating a sectarian division which is going to devastate and is devastating the region. So this is what
Mr.
we're
Chandon,
faced
sorry
with.
for stopping you.
And all sensible people can understand the situation as it is. Sorry, sister.
Let's take a look at the final comment Raya posted on our Facebook page. I'll be back with the concluding questions.
Recently, Israel claimed it shot down a Hezbollah drone. Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah denied it. It is obvious the racist Zionists are desperate because their agenda in Syria is evaporating in their face. Hezbollah do not need to ship arms through a war zone. I still have my doubts. It's obvious with the defeat of the Western-backed Syrian rebels, the Syrian army will emerge more stronger. Israel will pay for its crimes one day, and that day is fast approaching.
Now, a question to Mr. Bakri. Ms. Bakri, quickly, if you can, we have here claims that when it comes to the interests of Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United States, and also the militants fighting against Bashar al-Assad, because their interests are shared, that they are trying to provoke a direct Western military intervention. What's your idea?
We are against any Western interventions in any Muslim land. Even we are against all those regimes existing in the Muslim land, whether the Saudi Kufr regimes or the Turkish or the Egyptians or the Syrian or the Lebanese or the Iranian. You know our views. We stand against all these regimes, and we believe that any Western intervention is a crime against Islam, against Muslims. Having I said that, yes, I must admit that is really, Syria nowadays, it has become on the eyes of the Western power as very important place, especially if the Islamists came to power, they're going to become really a catastrophe for the state of
Mr.
Israel.
Bakri, I have to stop you. We are running out of time, less than a minute left. To allow both our guests to give their concluding remarks. Mr. Chandon, do you think that even if our guest there is saying that they are against Western military intervention, however, the situation is meant to create that intervention, to create the conditions for that intervention?
The lunatic criminals who make up the nutty death squads who are devastating Syria, what good have they done to any people that they've impacted? They devastate families whose sons stupidly and foolishly get themselves involved in fantasy talk about Al-Qaeda attacks in England across the West. You can see what they've done in Iraq, brought nothing but sectarian division and trauma to the Iraqi people. You've seen what they're doing and what they've done in Libya, which is allied with NATO to devastate, which is one of the most greatest nations in Africa, that's Libya. And you can see what they're doing in Syria. And you can see the utter buffoonery that's coming out of Mr. Omar Bakri's mouth. Compared to these people, the Syrian Ba'athist government was an oasis of peace and stability and respect between all the people who lived in Syria before this devastation. And as Gaddafi's Jamahiriya was an island of stability and respect between the tribes at that time. So really, these are the two alternatives that we're faced with.
Okay, I'm afraid we've run out of time. A big thank you there to political analyst Mr. Sukant Chandon in London, and our guest in Tripoli, Salafist cleric Mr. Sheikh Omar Bakri. Thank you very much for staying with us on another edition of The Debate. From me, Homa Lesgi, it's goodbye.